Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is October 23rd, and that means that it is the Azure Developer CLI Community Call with us all. So thank you ever so much for being here. We are joined again with Grace and Kristen.
Hello.
Hey.
How are we today?
Good.
Doing pretty good. It's the week before GitHub Universe, so lots going on.
Absolutely is. There's so much going on at the moment around Microsoft. I'm personally in Berlin right now, so I'm joining all the way from Europe, and I'm at the AI Tour. So the AI Tour stopped in Berlin. So it's amazing to see AZD is getting everywhere, which is fantastic. So hello, welcome to the October call, and let's get cracking. So what is on the agenda? As always, we're going to take you through the team, the amazing, fabulous people that are behind the Azure Developer CLI, and some of the community contributions that we have been having from the community. So some of you folks have been contributing to the product, to templates, to all sorts of stuff in the ecosystem, and it's fantastic. We love to see it, so keep it coming. Up next, we have then got the demo. So we are joined by Paul Yuk, we have got Wallace Breezer, and they are going to show us some really fun stuff around AZD and Azure functions and deployment stacks. And then at the end, we're going to run through some Q&As. So put your questions in the chat. Let us know what you want to hear directly from the team. So you ask us anything you want, and we'll see what we can do to answer them. So anything that's burning on your mind, whether it's upcoming features, whether it's stuff in the pipeline, issues that have been filed, or whether it's some cool updates that you love and you love to see. Just get it in there and get us chatting. So what's next? We have got the What About Team slide. So if you want to get in contact with any of us, so this here is the fabulous team, in case you haven't seen this one before. So these are all the amazing people that make AZD what it is. And it wouldn't be anything, of course, without the community, but this is the foundations. So if you want to get in contact with anybody, then feel free to ping them. You've got their @ symbols here. So whether it's on GitHub, and I think I've got some X's on there as well. So say hello and tag us. Grace, over to you.
Yeah, so just wanted to say thank you to the community contributors this month. We have Johan contributed 2 new templates. As always, if you ever want to contribute to AZD or to Awesome AZD, both of those repos are open source. Feel free to. We have issues tagged in the Azure developer repo. Azure, it's github.com/Azure/Azure Dev. We have some issues tagged in there as good first issues. If it's going to be your first time community contributing, that's a good place to start. And as always, if you build an AZD template that you want people to use, feel free to add that over on Awesome AZD.
I really love this template, Grace. If you can go back to the last one, the first template, the one that is the keyless deployment, that is a great place to start if you've never done keyless and you have some questions. The deployment goes really fast. It's under 2 minutes, and you can then explore how you might implement this, and then AZD down so that you can tear down the resources, but then you get a chance to see how that might look in your own application. So I highly suggest that first template. It's really nice addition.
Cool. And then, yeah, what's new this month? The October release was a little smaller than normal, but we have configurable API versions for container app deployments and remote build support for AKS. Wallace is joining. He's demoing something that came out in our last release, or I guess not our last release, our release before the October one, which was the September release. So demoing something from the September release too, which will be fun. And now we're going to get right into it. I'm going to hand it over to Paul, and he's going to discuss AZD and Azure Function.
All right. Hey, everybody. I guess I'm continuing the theme of, let me get this out of the way. Is that better? That way we're not picture in picture. So, hey, everybody, I'm Paul. I am continuing the theme of worldwide, spreading the love of AZD. So I'm in Warsaw, Poland right now. There's a cool conference here called Developer Days. So I've been a part of that. In both my talks, I showed AZD and some of the cool template work that's been going on. So big fan. I've actually been a contributor since the very beginning of Developer CLI. So it's actually really cool to be on in the Standup. All right, so what I wanted to show you today is a new set of, they're also starters and they're also secret lists. I think it's a really nice tie-in to the theme you just showed. I'll just show you how easy this is to find. Like if you just say learn Azure functions, it's going to take you to the docs or the getting started. And we're really prominently featuring that. If you go to the quick starts and you pick any of your favorite languages, let's say C# or Python, you love all the languages. You can pick now Azure Developer CLI as one of the new pivots. And we've reworked our tutorials to be both secure by design and also just incredibly AZD friendly. So you can see like, you know, step one is AZD init, passing in the template. We just have a little bit of config that you're going to do. You're going to clone, restore, and then you're going to run. You run locally, get a nice inner loop for the function. This is a function that can just do HTTP get, HTTP post. So it shows you how to do web API development. Functions about code. So of course we show you the code. It's really simple. And then deploying is as simple as AZDF. And Kristen, I think you and I shared a link that we could share with the rest of the community if you just want to kind of zoom into this. Let's take C# because I think that's the link I shared with you. But choose your favorite language. So go here. We'll just kind of kick this off. Copy and paste from the command line. AZD init's awesome because it's going to do the clone for me. It's on my machine. I've got everything I wanted. And we'll just kick up an op while I'm talking. I'm going to pick my individual subscription and then a region that makes sense. So I'll pick Paul subscription. Probably closest to either North Europe or Sweden, believe it or not. So I'll start there. And one really cool thing, I actually use the allowed regions or the allowed locations feature of Bicep itself, which funnels super well into AZD. And so I make sure that you stick within only the regions that we support. And then we're off to the races. We're going to deploy the whole resource group that's like ready to monitor, ready to use, fully secure by default. And everything here, if you click on under step one, there's this template repository backlink, and that's going to show you all the repos. So depending on what language you are, like we're in .NET, whether it's Python, JavaScript, whatever, we're going to take you to the backing repo, and you're going to see here that you've got the full README. It's kind of the same as the doc, but also we've got this infra folder, and the infra folder has all the Bicep that does everything I'm going to show here. I'll speak to like kind of the high level points, but you know, if you look at the main Bicep, some of the important things are we're establishing managed identity with user assigned managed identity, which is really cool because it'll be even more durable than the app itself. It can survive the lifetime of the app. And we'll create the actual API, which I'm going to implement as a flex consumption function. Talk a little about flex consumption. We have a storage account because there's distributed state management for a function. And we're going to do the RBAC grants. So like most important minimum grant is to be like a data reader or a data owner of your blob storage. So we'll do that. And one kind of neat, funky thing that we actually do with this too is we make you not only secure by design with identity, so you're using identity and no passwords or no secrets on disk, but also at another level, we add network isolation using VNets and private endpoints. So literally the only thing that can talk to your storage backend is the app itself. And there's like a warp tunnel that we created with a private endpoint. It's the only IP address that can actually reach that. So it's defense in depth. It prevents things like maybe Midnight Blizzard, which you might have read about. It really helps you be more ready. So I love the sample. It's kind of using all of our best practices. Secure by design, VNets, flex consumption, Azure Dev CLI, all the goodies. That's while I'm chatting. That shouldn't have happened. Resource group already exists. Well, I guess my practice usually pays off. Maybe it didn't this time. So let's just make a new environment. Let's call this for sure unique RG. As I say with a wink. That's okay. You'll have to trust me that this is a good, solid Bicep. While we're doing that, I'm going to swap over to the Azure portal. And I actually deployed this one just a little while ago today. It's in North Europe, so that's how you can tell it's legit. I'll zoom it in a bit. So you can see everything that we had in the AZD bicep and the infra folder is here. You know, the star of it is the function app, but also we have the user assigned identity. We also have all the networking that we need. We have a VNet. We have private endpoints, which, like, to each of your dependencies, a super best practice is to have a private endpoint. That's kind of that warp tunnel or like pinhole that you're poking through, which actually bridges two subnets, and it takes you from the app subnet back to the storage subnet. And we have this thing called a private DNS zone, which will basically map what you'd want to call, like basically calling the public blob storage endpoint. It'll map it into a private link endpoint. I'll give you a quick example. This is a little bit of a crash course in networking. We haven't spent too much time. If I click on my private endpoint and I zoom out just enough to see the left-hand side, and we can zoom back in, you can see that my function app has a network interface with an IP address, and what we're used to calling is a blob storage URI that's kind of like this. It's my unique name, .blob.core.windows.net. Now that's a publicly accessible, fully qualified domain name. And normally, you know, if you hadn't secured your resources with networking, you would just be able to browse that and you'd get right in. But for defense in depth, we're not going to allow that. So we're going to allow the app to use this name, but you can see under the covers what it's going to do is only this IP address for my app is allowed to actually, through this DNS zone, find the public or the private DNS, and it can traverse its way through the subnet and actually attach to the private storage. So this is a technique we use to network isolate two subnets, allow well-known DNS resolution, but actually translate through to private networking. So there's a lot of machinery here, but in the end, it kind of makes you secure with identity and secure with networking. I had a slide to kind of summarize this. So what we just did, we assign managed identity. And in this case, I went with user assigned managed identity. Whether you use system assigned or user assigned, they're both good. They're both secure. System assigned managed identity is kind of a default built-in managed identity for your app, whether it's a web app or a function. And it's quick, so it's really good for dev test. But the problem is if you delete your application, or even if you make some edits to your application, that system identity can rotate and go away or even get deleted. So it's not that durable. So if you're worried about the durability of your identity, I like this user assigned identity because you create a user assigned identity separately. It's its own resource. And even if you deleted or modified your function or your web app, it's gonna be a durable resource. Like that user only gets deleted if it's explicitly deleted. So it's just a more durable, kind of like production ready way to do managed identity. And the thing to keep in mind is that your application, your code, you'll always default to system assigned managed identity. If you ever get exceptions like, hey, I made a user identity, I can't use it. Well, it might be because the default is always pointing to the system assigned, and you need to do additional config to disambiguate and choose the identity. So like one of the tips I usually provide is if you want to use user identity, you're looking for a triplet of config settings. You're looking for the client ID, which is kind of like the application identity or the client identity that really identifies what that user assigned identity is. Like if you go to the Blade, Portal Blade, or the CLI to look at your user assigned identity, there'll be a client ID that's uniquely identifying, oh, use this identity. And then there's also a credential. And this is a funny one. This is like a legacy artifact of the Azure SDKs. But the credential isn't actually a credential. So don't worry. Don't be like, Paul's telling me to use credentials and clients. I was just told not to do that. It's actually just, the setting is just the word managed identity. And it tells the SDKs to go into a managed identity mode. Like it or not, that's kind of how it works today. And so you're going to set that client ID, you're going to set the credential, and then the last thing is there's always like a URI or a name to the resource you want to connect to. So in this case, this sample uses a storage account for Azure Web Job Storage. But let's say you're working with a SQL database, or you're working with an Event Hubs or a Service Bus namespace. It's always that URI to that resource or the namespace. And then there'll be a well-known property like account name or like namespace or blob service URI we're going to disambiguate. And just a little rule of thumb, I'm showing you on the right-hand side, there's these kind of like app settings or environment variables, and they have the name of the connection, which is some custom name you give it, and then underscore, underscore, and then the property name. And that's actually a syntax that's been supported by the Azure SDKs like forever. It's a way that you can, through config, override properties in the SDK's connections through either host.json or app.json or actual system environment variables. So I'm just using that technique to override these three property names with this underscore underscore syntax. You might also see there's like a well-known global config that's called Azure Client ID, and that would be the same idea. You're setting a global client ID to be used by the whole application. So just a little bit of like, if you ever see this kind of demystifies it a bit. So we use that connection property syntax. And once you have your identity, the important thing is you set these RBAC roles. Now, RBAC stands for roles-based access control. And you're basically going to grant a role to the identity. So in this case, a function app, you always want it to be a reader and writer of your storage account. And so data owner is the exact grant that we want to give it. And that's what we do. Also, just one more kind of needy detail. Not only do we use identity for like dependencies of the function at runtime, so Azure Web Storage does the state management. If you use other triggers and bindings like Event Grid, Event Hubs, Blob Storage, SQL, those are going to have identity. But also like deployment itself. When you deploy an application, that's just an app.zip file. And the service needs to be able to pull your app from a blob storage, and that deployment mechanism itself needs to use identity. So that's actually a third place, and I can give you a peek in a second how that's done. But we're going to use identity everywhere, and we're going to throw away passwords, and we're going to throw away service principals because that's how we get into trouble. All right, so we'll just pop back, and maybe I'll show a little code because this group I feel like I can eke out just a little bit. Oh shoot, I never deployed it. Look at me. That's fine. All right, so we'll get a new terminal. All right, and let's just pop this open in code. And we'll make it a little bigger. Okay, so staring again, just a little bit of the anatomy here, like how did we do all this stuff? So first, we started with an Azure YAML. We identified the name of the template. The team and I felt so good about this template, we actually made it a version 1.0. I haven't done that in a while, so that felt pretty good. And again, we made variants that are language specific. So if you kind of substitute .NET 8 here for Python or JavaScript or TypeScript, you're going to, even PowerShell, you're going to get a different template. And then we have the info folder. And let's make this a little smaller. Let's drag it down. In the info folder, the main thing we should always focus on is main and the main parameters. Main is kind of like the top level resources and constructs of the app we want to have. So we've got the resource group, we've got the user assigned identity, we've got the app service plan. Note that I set that to flex consumption. And we have the app or API itself. That's going to point to the app folder. That's kind of suggesting that we're doing something a little bit more special than can be in the core folder. Core folder is for like reusable building blocks that almost any app would use. We try to sync that up. I think eventually we'll put as much in the forgive me if I forget the name, the new AZD registry. So we want to use that, but so we try, like if we do specializations, we don't pull it from core, we pull it from app. I'll show you that in a second. You can see here I'm flowing through the identity. Yeah, I'm going to flow through the virtual networking also, because we want this to be secure and networked. Here's the storage account, same thing, flows through the identity of the network. we're going to do those RBAC grants. I'm going to enter Zen mode. Ooh, Zen mode. So we're like full screen on code. You can see here's the actual built-in role grant that we want to do. We want to be a data owner. Never you want to be owner, because owner means you can do management stuff. You can mint identities. You want to be the data owner. It's very important. And then we're going to grant access from that user identity to the storage account. We're going to turn on the virtual network. And we're going to set up some private endpoints. Those are those like firewall pinholes that we're setting up for set monitoring, app insights, and in the end, we'll persist to the environment file with outputs. So as you can see, we tried to make sure that everything that's kind of a logical building block, we're going to add to the app, is expressed in main. And then we layer in components from app and then from core to kind of implement, to be the implementation details of this. So if we go to the app folder, some of the special stuff we did here is we defined what a VNet is. And a VNet, it's like a private network. And we defined 3 subnets. We defined one for the app itself and then any dependencies. This one just has storage, but sometimes I have an event hub too. Each one will be in a different subnet. And then the private endpoints are used next to define those kind of warp tunnels or pinholes through the firewalls. They'll let you traverse from one network to another. So we set that up here. This is all, by the way, this is like reusable stuff. These are building blocks that might help you if you're working on AZD a lot. For API, API is kind of a general abstraction. It's just a back end. We're going to implement it as a functions flex consumption. If you don't know about Flex, Flex is a new hosting plan for functions. It's not just like a new SKU. I mean, we do new SKUs fairly often, but this is a really cool one. It does burst scale. Like you could burst 1,000 instances of a function in under a minute. Even it's serverless, so you can scale to 0, you can scale to 1,000, you can scale back. It totally listens to, it monitors your events and your HTTP to decide how to scale. And then it supports VNet. It supports that private networking, which is really important to enterprises and corporations, just for security in general. So it's got those 3 features. So it's like a lot more than just a SKU. It's kind of a new way to do functions. It's a really good way. And then here, it's aware of identity. It's aware of our state management with Azure Web Job Storage. It's got app insights, VNet, so on and so forth. And one super special thing, you can see it's referencing a new module we have called Functions Flex Consumption. So if we go into core and to host, so there has been this like functions bicep, which kind of assumes you're using ordinary consumption functions or maybe elastic premium functions. We made this side-by-side one because the ARM resource definition for flex consumption is a little bit newer, a little bit different. And it understands what language stack you're using. So like .NET Isolated 8 or Python 3.11, it understands that. It understands the SKU size. And really importantly, I mentioned I'd get to this later, so we get to it now. Deployment is even done securely always. So you can see that there's a deployment section and it points to storage. We're going to point to blob containers. So in the past, we used to do deployment from file storage. File storage is fine, but it's kind of a legacy of the Samba days, and it doesn't understand managed identity right now. So we're using blob storage. It fully understands identity, and you can see that we're setting the authentication type to be either system assigned or user assigned managed identity. And then the value, like in the end, this long variable expression here, that's just going to turn into a blob URL, like an ordinary, blobs.windows-azure.com/myblob-container/app.zip. And so this is going to dereference to an app zip. So, the long and the short of it is flex consumption. You just say, hey, I'm using blob containers. Here's a pointer to my blob, and I'm going to use my managed identity. And again, it's just one of the many ways that we keep you completely secretless throughout this whole thing, which is where we want to be in 2024. And I don't know, I've gone on for a bit. Maybe haven't been as interactive as I'd want to be. So I could stop demoing and chill for a bit. Maybe there's a few questions. If you want to take me off the share.
Paul, I found myself wanting to like send reactions to so many things that you said.
Awesome.
That was a really awesome demo. I have a few questions for you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So you've highlighted flex consumption quite a bit and started talking about the different features of it. Can you say a little bit more about how new it is and what brought you to create the flex consumptions on the team?
Absolutely. So, so as I mentioned, flex consumption is our newest plan, new SKU of the functions family, and it's meant to be serverless. And if you really think of all the complaints that the customers have had about functions over the years, or if you compare functions to Lambda, it's like, well, I can be serverless, but I don't have VNet. And boy, it's a little bit slow to have a cold start, or to have scale out to like crazy scale. It's kind of slow, doesn't have a VNet. I'm not super excited about it. I'm gonna go use app service dedicated, or I'm gonna go use Elastic Premium. And so like there's a lot of users out there who wanted to truly be in a serverless scale to zero, scale to anything mode, and just couldn't, because other things like VNet were missing. And we never meant to hold back VNet. It just architecturally was really hard, because once you scale to zero, like a lot of the heartbeats of your app are gone. And so we needed a new architecture that could be like, well, how can I keep monitoring your HTTP or your event sources? How can I keep that alive even if your app is like scaled to zero and literally not running? And how do I join a VNet ephemerally, like in nanoseconds, if the app scales from 0 to 1? So we had like a bunch of technical problems, I would say, that we had to work through. So there's no business reason or no like nefarious reason why we didn't do it. We just didn't have the tech yet. But we've been working on that for a couple of years, and fingers crossed, maybe 2 fingers crossed. This November, so just literally in a few weeks, we're gonna go GA with flex consumption. It's been preview since, build. It's been even private preview before that. It's been a long journey. Like, I'm sure I had more hair and like less wrinkles when I started. We're getting there. Really, really close. And so yeah, it's the serverless scheme we always wanted, and we finally built it.
That's cool. And what a time too. Like, you talk so much about security, and this brings a lot of more secure features along with what the whole entire functions work that you're doing. So I'm curious, because this is an AZD community call. I'm curious, when you were doing the template to show off the Azure functions and the flex consumption, how easy was it to implement all of the security features that you talked about and the deployment?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. So the nice thing, I think I've loved the direction AZD's gone for a while, where there's these, I call them building blocks, but there's these modules in Bicep. A lot of them already exist, and the patterns I think already existed too. So like we've had for a while the ability to create an identity in Bicep and with AZD. So that was a building block I was able to reuse. And we've had the ability to do even these set access kinds of modules that will grant RBAC access from an identity to a particular resource. Maybe I did a little jujitsu and I generalized that a little bit more. Like I could take an array of principles. It's a little bit more forgiving, maybe now than it used to be. And so there's that. I'd say VNet was a gap. I might have contributed that one to you all. So you could use mine, because that was a pain in the you-know-where. And I tried to really do it textbook. Like, I spent a lot of time with the networking experts. Will know more about it than I ever will. And how do you want to have your app in a subnet? You want to have each dependency in a subnet. And this new VNet module will set you up in that pattern. So you'll be much more secure by design. And then you want to have these like private endpoints, and you have a DNS zone, which does that fancy lookup from like the public to the private link. And you have to do that just right. I was kind of in a catch-22, because Bicep itself was kind of saying, you can't do that. Like, you're trying to use a URL that's like specific to one cloud. Don't do that. Don't do that. And so I learned all these kind of tricks where you can use expressions in Bicep. and you can kind of express the right URI for the cloud, which was needed to even provision the resource. There's like a little catch-22. So I'd say other than VNet, that's my long way of saying like a lot of it was there. It was really easy. And once we have a good base of modules, it's much more about like composing the modules and maybe flowing it through parameters than it is just heavy lifting everything yourself.
Yeah.
And I hope that this one leaves you all with more building blocks that you can either just use or like inspires you to do your next one, or you say, Paul, that's wrong, and you PR to mine, that's fine. But
Right, like even having a VNet starter, we
Yeah.
have a lot to learn from you here, and we'll pass this along too to the Bicep team and work with them on that as well. This is cool.
Awesome. Yeah, and I hope
So-
like with AVM, I'm excited about that too. I hope we all
Yeah.
sort of contribute more to that. We get some of that source code out of your repo and kind of into the AVM.
Yeah, that's the dream. Okay,
Dream.
one last
Yeah.
question / observation. I couldn't help it. So you're at .NET Dev Days conference. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so when you had your slide up, I thought it was an Easter egg or something was going on because the logo itself looks just like the staircase behind you.
Wow. That's
It's kind of like that
coincidence.
Fibonacci shell, you'll have to take a
Yeah,
look. but
you're right.
It's really cool.
We just got lucky on that one. I'm in a really cool hotel and I had a really cool power template. So if they did something magical, I don't know. But
That's
I just
awesome.
got lucky on that one.
Well, I hope you have a really good time at the rest of the conference. And thank you so much for joining
you.
all the way from Europe for this call. And we'll see you around.
All right, we'll see you. See you next time.
All right. Bye, Paul. Okay. So next up, we have Wallace. And I'm just going to bring you to the stage. Oh, sorry, Wallace.
All right.
I think
Am I good to go?
we have, yeah, you're going to talk about deployment stacks today.
I am. Yeah. Thanks for having me here. It's been a few community calls since I joined you guys. So thanks again for bringing me back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
so-
glad for that you're here. And I'll just give you the full stage to talk about it.
Sounds good. So today we're going to talk about Azure deployment stacks and how you can use those deployment stacks within AZD. And we'll drop a link in the chat as well, so you could learn and read up about deployment stacks on your own time as well. But the quick kind of gist of it is that deployment stacks is a new deployment technology that builds on top of your standard ARM-based Azure deployments. And essentially what it does is it allows you to kind of create this cohesive unit of resources that have kind of this ownership model to it. And it allows you to have kind of more fine-grained control of the resources that are created by your Azure deployments. And there's also some additional security enhancements on these Azure deployments as well. So it can automatically create deny settings. So you could really control like really who has access to delete and write to these resources after they're deployed. So it kind of gives you this kind of more granular model to work with your deployments. And since it does have this sense of ownership, it also helps you on the other side of deployments as well. So if you have, ephemeral deployments that you need to kind of tear down and spin back up over time, since the deployment stack has ownership and knows exactly what resources it owns, it's able to clean those up really intelligently and really accurately as well. And we've had some issues in AZD in the past where depending on how complex your deployment may be, the AZD down operation to destroy your resources could fail or potentially even delete more things than you initially thought. So deployment stacks kind of helps with the creation and destruction of resources across the board in Azure. And so now let's kind of dive in and I'll show you how you can set that up in AZD. So the first thing that we're going to do here is enable the alpha feature. So right now this is a alpha feature in AZD. This will soon become the kind of standard deployment model for AZD, but for now it's kind of an opt-in scenario. And this command I have on my screen here, so AZD config set alpha.deployment.stacks on, that will opt you into deployment stacks on AZD. And that's all you actually have to do. So there's no modification to your existing bicep files or anything else that you need to do to kind of opt into this model. You just set that flag, it turns on, and behind the scenes what will happen is AZD will automatically create this deployment stack for you, and then that stack will be created based on the bicep that you already wrote for your application, and everything just gets automatically associated. So let's dive in, and I'll show some deployments that I did prior to this meeting here today. So I have this template here. It's a Node.js Mongo template. It's a container app template. We'll also post a link in the chat to this template too. It's a very straightforward template. It has 2 container apps inside of a container app environment, pushes images up to a container registry, and then it's secured by a combination of Key Vault with some secrets as well and managed identity. And then the backend uses a Cosmos database with the Mongo API for storage. And then we kind of wrap this all up with the Azure Monitor on top for observability. So when I go to my terminal and use AZD, basically nothing changes, like I said. So if I just switch gears real quick and jump into the code for this template. So my main.bicep file that I have here, this is my entry point for the bicep deployment. Nothing changes here. This top level deployment is a subscription scoped deployment. And Azure Deployment Stacks works across various scopes as well. So you can use subscription scopes, resource group scopes, even management group scopes, if that is something that you're doing within your organization. So no changes to my bicep to leverage deployment stacks here. And so next up, I ran an AZD deploy or provision operation here. I created a new environment and everything kind of continued as normal. I selected a subscription that I want to use. It deployed all of my resources here. We'll swap over to the Azure portal in a minute and I'll kind of show you what that looks like. And that's it. So I ran that all before, so you didn't have to sit here and watch it deploy in the background. So now if I switch over to my Azure portal, so deployment stacks is a new option that shows side by side with the standard ARM deployment. So if it's a subscription-based deployment, it'll show within your subscription. If it's a resource group scope deployment, it'll show under your resource group as well. So I'm just refresh the deployment list here. And there's 3 environments that I deployed using AZD. It's these bottom 3 here. So the first one is this ACA02. If we click into that, it will show us the list of resources that this deployment stack owns. So we saw all of those resources identified in that architecture diagram. So we have some container apps, the resource group itself. We have a container registry, Cosmos. We have some RBAC role assignments, a whole bunch of stuff that the bicep did for us that you would have within your own application. And so these are owned by your deployment stack. And let's just go and let's see. We'll go ahead and delete this one. So let me just show the list of my environments here. So here's the 3 that we have. We're going to swap over to this first one that I created. Do an environment select command. And now we're just going to do an AZD destroy or down operation. And this is communicating with the deployment stack behind the scenes. And it's going to show us, the primary resources that are going to be deleted here. So it says, okay, we're going to delete this resource group called to do ACA02. And these are the primary resources that it's going to delete. And there's a total of 19. We only show kind of the top, most important ones here. So we're going to choose yes. We're going to go ahead and destroy this. And if we go back into the Azure portal, we'll go back to our deployment stacks and refresh. We'll see that this particular deployment stack is now in this deleting phase. So while this is deleting, a couple things to note. So we know a lot of applications that are built have complex deployment requirements where you may want to deploy a set of resources, maybe sometimes in one resource group. Other times you may want to deploy your resources across multiple resource groups. Sometimes those resource groups may already exist in your organization and you have to kind of work within those constraints. So deployment stacks really is able to leverage those things. So if you are deploying resources within existing resource groups, the deployment stack knows that it owns the resources of those resource groups, but not the resource groups themselves. So then on the flip side, when you do an AZD down operation, it will only ever delete the things that it created for you. So you won't have to worry about other resources being deleted in those resource groups or anything like that. Let's see. And there's a couple other really cool features I mentioned about deployment stacks, and you can read more about that in the docs here. But there's a whole bunch of deny settings that can be applied as well. So if you need to really lock down the resources that are in your deployment, you can use deny settings. And we surface those deny settings directly within the Azure.yaml as well. So if we go to the template that I was just showing you that was deployed, we go to the Azure.yaml. We could now set those up within the infra section of the Azure.yaml. This is a bicep only feature. So once you have, provider bicep is set, now you have this deployment stacks option that becomes available. And there's a few different settings here. So there's action on manage. This is a really important one as well. The default value for action on manage is delete. And what that means is that when you delete a deployment stack, that basically means it's becoming unmanaged. And it's like, what do you want to do with those unmanaged resources? And the default setting is we want to go ahead and delete them. That's kind of like part of the AZD down experience. Clean up after ourselves, delete everything that was created. There's other options in here as well, where you can just say, nope, leave the resources there, but just detach them. Put them in a detached state. The deployment stack gets deleted, but leave the resources intact. So that's another option that you have directly within the configuration here for your deployments. And then there is the deny settings. So this is, what do you want to do for this deployment? Do you want to have deny settings? The default option in AZD is none right now, but you can override that to either deny delete or deny write and delete. And again, you can read more about this within the links that we'll post. And in addition to the deny settings, you have more granular control as well. So you can choose excluded actions that you don't want to be available on these resources, as well as have excluded principals. So if there's users or groups within your organization that you want to always have access to these resources, you can set these in here as well. So they would have access to delete these resources, for example, within the Azure portal or other means. But otherwise, it would go only would be able to be deleted through the deployment stack object themselves. So let's see, our delete operation is still running. It takes a little bit of time to clean things up. Let's see if I missed anything. I think that's about it. That kind of covered the top level area. So I'll pause here and see if there's any questions from the team or anybody from the community.
Hey, Wallace, that was brilliant demo. I like this. I like this a lot. We do actually have one question in the chat for you, and I'm just going to pop it onto the screen now. Let me just pull. Do I still need to share your screen, or can I pull that off?
No, so I see it. So is it expected to get what if functionality around deployment stacks?
Absolutely.
So we do, and so what if functionality is essentially kind of like a preview mode, right? It's like showing me what's going to happen when the deployment stack happens. So the preview mode today is supported in standard deployments. That currently is a gap with deployment stacks today, but we are in discussions with the feature team. They are aware that it's a gap and it's something that's coming very soon. I don't have a timeline to share with you today, but we will have what if and preview support for deployment stacks in the near future.
Oh, amazing stuff.
Yeah. One other thing I
fantastic.
forgot to touch on here is that as you're working and iterating on your application and you're doing deployments with deployment stacks enabled, it will automatically clean up to get you to your desired state. So your desired state is what is in your main.bicep file, right? So if you no longer need a resource, you remove that resource from your bicep file, and on the next deployment stack deployment, those now orphaned resources will automatically be deleted for you, so you don't have to go back and kind of manually delete them and clean things up. So your bicep is your desired state. At the end of a deployment, you will get to that desired state.
Amazing stuff. Wonderful. Have you still got a bit more to go in your demo, or are we done?
Yeah, that's about it for the demo. So happy to answer any other questions if there are any.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think I've got one question, probably just from myself personally. We've been super lucky to have you show alpha features on this call. We had, I think it was Wei who featured composability last month, which was again like another early stage alpha feature. What was the main driver behind this? What was the main driver to have this as part of AZD?
The main driver behind this was to really answer a lot of questions that our customers have had around kind of ownership of the resources that of their application, right? There's so many different complex configurations that we've seen our customers using, deploying resources to multiple resource groups, potentially multiple subscriptions within the same deployment. And we really wanted to make sure that AZD had and knows about the ownership of those resources so that it does not unintentionally, delete or modify resources that are out of its own scope. So it really allows AZD to have a concise view of, what are the resources that it owns for your application. And we could use this to power other scenarios within AZD also. And it just allows us to, light up, a clean creation and deploy at the down and destroy experience that we wanted to have, so that there's no more questions around, oh, we'll delete my whole resource group, we'll delete these other things. And it's like, with deployment stacks enabled, it will only ever delete things that it takes ownership of through your bicep file. And
Brilliant.
even if you're referencing existing resources in other resource groups, it understands like the existing reference inside of bicep, and it does not take ownership of those resources. It knows that they're kind of external.
Nice. You got like a lot more granular control then over your deployments and sort of what sits where, and you have more control with AZ. That's brilliant to see. Absolutely love it. Thank you ever so much, Wallace. Wonderful demo. And if you have any questions, then you can reach out to Wallace. We flashed up his username, but Wallace, you want to put that one back into the chat? I think you should be able to for anybody who's watching, and it's also show on the recording. So you can reach out to Wallace or anybody else on the team. And
all right. Well, thanks for having me today.
Thank you very much. Cool. I'm going to bring back Grace and Kristen. So welcome to the stage, folks. We're going to pop up your slide again. There we go, Grace. What's next on the agenda? What's next, folks? I think it is Q&A. So we kind of covered all the questions in the chat. But if you do have any, please pop some in, get us talking.
So Liam, I have a question.
Go for it.
How is the AI tour, and what exactly are you doing in Berlin?
Oh my goodness. It is a really, really cool, amazing event which Microsoft is running all around the world. There's so many different stops going on. I'm personally at the one in Berlin. I'm based in London, so I'm from the UK, if you can't tell from my accent. So it's a little hop across the pond to me. And I'm going to be talking around AI. So the fundamentals of AI as a breakout session. I'm actually talking tonight. So literally when I finish this call, I hop downstairs. So I'm in the Microsoft Berlin office right now. I go downstairs and I'm going to be speaking at I think it's the global or like the AI community days, which is really cool. So I'm going to be doing a joint presentation with my colleague, Chris Noring, and we're going to be talking around deployments and of course, AZD. So we've got a good session there tonight. And then tomorrow, we've got another theatre session at the AI tour itself, where we're going to be doing this really cool thing that we're going to call the coffee test. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab somebody in the audience, probably one of our friends who's actually seen the demo, because we don't want people to miss out. And we're going to ask them to go and run and get a coffee and see how long it takes them to get that coffee. And then hopefully, by the time they get back, we would have actually deployed a full end-to-end AI application using AZD. So fingers crossed. I'm going to keep them both crossed for this one. It should be a really fun session. It's going to be really interactive, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I've got like AZD scattered all over the AI tour stuff over here. It's a brilliant event, and it's super exciting to be here. Thank you for asking.
That's awesome. Okay, and then we have a link for the event too. I'll just show this on the screen. And can anyone join if they're in Berlin and they can still sign up?
I don't believe you can still sign up anymore. You may be lucky if it's still on the website, because it is tomorrow. It starts tomorrow at, I think, 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. But if you are around, please do swing by. And if you are in town, please do let us know. Ping me, because I'm sticking around for a day or two, and I will be around to come and see you. So if you have any questions or you want to come say hi, I'm here. Come and see me. So super
Yeah, there's
exciting.
been some really cool locations in Mexico, in Brazil, in South Korea, all over the world. So wherever you're streaming this from, check out the AI tour, and there is likely a stop in your city. That's pretty cool.
There's tons. There's absolutely tons. I think we just had the London one, which is like the business decision maker one, which is like a smaller AI tour, but it's still a stop in London. We've got the bigger one in London happening in March. You know, my goodness, there's just tons. They're all over the place. It's brilliant to see this. Absolutely love it. Cool stuff. Grace, any questions? Anything you want to ask?
I should have thought of a question.
I love putting you on the spot on these calls. They're brilliant. I love it.
Cool
stuff. Well, I think that's it. I think we've covered everything. In the interest of time, because we only got 5 minutes left, I think we can probably cap it off there. Actually, no, I lie. Kristen, where are you going to be? You're going somewhere soon, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Pamela and I are heading to GitHub Universe next week, and we have some really cool, exciting things that we'll be showing there, and that we'll bring to the community call at the end of November. So we'll have some really nice AI related things to share with the community that will hopefully. The goal is to make developing with AI features and all the models a little bit easier and staying in the developer workflow with AZD. So we're excited about that. And we have some new AZD stickers. So if you're at GitHub Universe, come find me or Pamela. We'll have a booth, and we have new stickers.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. Where is it?
In San Francisco, in California.
Brilliant.
And we found a new sticker maker that we were pretty impressed with. So we got these really cool stickers, and on the back of the sticker, you can actually print information. So you can print the URL or your website link, whatever you want people to do. Yeah, please.
Okay. Here's the sticker, and then the back, you can see. It might not focus super well, but it has like a little. It says Azure Developer CLI as like a short link, aka.ms/azd, and then it says code to cloud in minutes.
I'm going to give you my address. You can send some to the UK for me.
I should.
Yeah, we definitely will. We have a big stack of stickers, and yeah, it's really fun when you find like a new maker creator that you can see different features. So we were excited. What was the sticker company called that we used this time? How did we
give them a quick shout out?
We'll have to add it in the show notes, but we were really impressed by them. We found like it was kind of a last minute switch, and researching like where to do this or do that, just like developers are looking for applications, we had to do that for stickers. So we were like pretty excited to find this one.
I found it. It's called Sticker App, which is a super easy name to remember. But yeah, Sticker App. It was really nice. And like I talked to customer service a couple times while we were getting them printed. They were super good. So if you need stickers, use Sticker App.
Quick shout out for Sticker App. Love it.
Also, Kristen, I wanted to ask your talk with Pamela. That I know sometimes GitHub Universe, not every talk is streamed. Is your talk being streamed?
Actually, I don't know. I'll look and we can put it in the show notes. We'll put a link to both the talk that will feature AZD, and Pamela has, I think, 3 talks. So I'll put all those links in the show notes. So earlier we showed the GitHub discussions where we have the community call. That's where we'll put all the show notes and everything that you'll need to find. And yeah, we'll add that there.
Cool. Yeah, because to be clear, I think GitHub Universe, I think registration is full. I think like in-person tickets are sold out, but it's still free to attend online, and you can sign up to do that the day before if you wanted to. So still can catch AZD and the other talks.
That's really cool. It's good to see AZD and the service being sort of promoted all over the world. This is the best bit about having a global team and a global community, right? Like these events just thrown up all over the place. And it actually reminded me, Microsoft Ignite is going to be before our next community call as well. So when is our next community call? That's right.
So our next community call is actually during Ignite. No. It's the week after. So it's the 27th, and Ignite is the 19th through the 22nd. And so AZD will also be going to Ignite. That is also sold out, but there are you can still register for digital streaming of the sessions. And we'll be doing an AZD session. Unfortunately, that one won't be streamed, but maybe we'll have to do a demo of it on the community call on the on November 27th and do like a replay.
Absolutely. I think, Kristen, you and I are both going to Ignite, so we can certainly do a rundown of Ignite on the next community. Basically, everybody just join the next community call because there's going to be some really cool stuff going on. That's what I'm saying. So come and join us for next month. It's going to be really good.
Yeah, and we'll have more info on the composability feature that Wei shared. So we'll talk about that next month. We'll have Ignite. We'll be able to recap GitHub Universe, so it'll be jam-packed. If you have a demo that you want to show before the end of the year, we only have 2 minute community calls. So Grace has this nice form that you can fill out if you want to demo something, and we'll put that in the show notes as well. And you can scan it here if you want to do it while it's top of mind. Like, just submit. It'll be really fun to see you demo what you have on the call.
And I just realized the next call is not 23rd of October because that is today. It is the final Wednesday of November.
Yeah.
Yeah, always the 4th Wednesday of the month.
Absolutely. All righty,
Cool.
folks. Well, I think that is it for today. I've got to hop because I've got to go jump on stage again. So thank you, everybody, for joining. These are some really cool features and community contributions coming to AZD and some amazing stuff in the pipeline. So stay tuned and we will see you in the next one. See you later,
Thanks,
folks.
Jen.
Bye all.
See you, Grace. Bye, everyone.